6 o'clock it is, Central African time. A very good morning to you. And it's time to rise and shine. Welcome to the show. You tuned into Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective. My name is Asanda, Beda. We're broadcasting from Johannesburg in South Africa. That's where our live studios are. On DSTV Audio Bouquet, we're on channel 802, on OpenView on channel 628, and on the internet at www.channelafrica.co.za. Also find us on the SABC Plus. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. Did you have a good weekend?
I did.
Did you enjoy your day off yesterday?
I did, yes.
Yeah,
how was your work day yesterday?
It was nice, reflecting on Freedom Day, and I was quite surprised to see the Mines Minister as the acting president, Gwede Mantashe, yesterday. So that was interesting and fascinating. But otherwise, it was just another day in life. But anyway, we've got another 4 days of this week to go.
Yeah.
And coming up on the program, we've got a few discussions. We're going to be finding out what's been happening in East Africa on the news front. And then you would have heard of a reshuffle in Somalia's cabinet. We find out why from an analyst in the next hour. But top stories this hour. Suspected Islamist militants killed at least 22 people and wounded several others in two separate attacks over the weekend in northeastern Nigeria. And Ethiopia expects preliminary deal on IMF review within days.
All that will be coming up, of course, and more. Let's get our news update first with Jwalani Tulongwepe, and then sports headlines after that by Fikile Lengwadi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Mozambique, Lesotho and Zimbabwe have been identified as key contributors to mass illegal migration into South Africa. The Border Management Authority Commissioner Dr. Michael Masiabato told a media briefing in Pretoria that this has become a norm, especially during the Easter holiday.
Even in this 2025 Easter period, a consistent pattern of top three nationalities which continue to undermine our immigration laws remains the Zimbabweans at 2019, followed by Basutus at 1,921, and then followed by Mozambicans at 1,143. And the remainder of 1,170 were shared amongst the Swatis and other nationalities.
The conclave to elect the 267th Pope will begin next Wednesday after the conclusion of the mourning period of Pope Francis. The closed-door meeting will start inside the Sistine Chapel and will involve some 135 cardinals from across the world. It follows the death of Pope Francis, who died at the age of 88 on Easter Monday and whose funeral was held on Saturday. There is no timescale as to how long it will take to elect the next Pope, but the previous two conclaves held in 2005 and 2013 lasted just 2 days. There are reports that fighting has continued in the Democratic Republic of Congo's North Kivu province. This after the country and Rwanda signed an agreement in Washington to promote peace and economic development over the weekend. The accord, signed at a ceremony with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, is seen as part of a diplomatic push to end violence after M23 rebels advance in eastern Congo. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have been displaced in recent months as the M23 rebels seize large parts of mineral-rich territory in eastern DRC. The DRC's Foreign Affairs Minister is Therese Kayikwamba Wagner.
For us, the urgency of this initiative is not theoretical, it is human. We signed this declaration of principles not as a symbolic gesture but as a political commitment, a reaffirmation of principles enshrined in international law and most recently echoed in the UN Security Council Resolution 2773, a resolution calling for the immediate, unconditional and verifiable withdrawal of all foreign troops from sovereign territory of the DRC.
Suspected Islamist militants have killed at least 22 people and wounded several others in two separate attacks over the weekend in northeastern Nigeria. The country has been grappling with a long-running insurgency in the northeast region, primarily driven by the Islamist armed group Boko Haram. In Borno State, suspected militants ambushed and killed 10 civilians and 2 security officials in an attack on Saturday, while in neighboring Adamawa State, suspected Boko Haram militants killed 10 people and wounded several others in an attack also on Saturday. Earlier this month, Borno's Governor Babagana Zulum acknowledged that Boko Haram had renewed attacks and kidnappings, reversing previous gains by security forces. A top Palestinian official has told the International Court of Justice in The Hague that Israel is blocking humanitarian aid to Palestinians as a weapon of war. Amar Hijazi told the ICJ that almost all Palestinians had no access to drinking water and that UN humanitarian stores were empty. The court has begun 5 days of hearings to examine Israel's legal obligations to provide aid to Gaza and the occupied West Bank. The BBC's Anna Holligan has the details.
The catalyst for this week's hearings was Israel's ban on cooperation with the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees. But the live stream from the Peace Palace, home to the ICJ, provides a global platform to highlight the wider concerns and context. The Palestinians' ambassador in the Netherlands, Amar Hijazi, gave a disturbing and graphic testimony. He accused Israel of conducting a genocidal campaign, attempting to erase Palestinians. Israel, he said, is turning Gaza into a mass grave for Palestinians and those coming to their aid. A lawyer for the Palestinians described Gaza as a killing field and accused Israel of deliberately starving civilians. Israel says it is complying with international law and that there is no aid shortage.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
With the sports headlines, I'm Figile Lungwati. The Pyramids Football Club striker Dodo Elgabas Unity says the team is unity helped them overcome the challenge of playing without large crowds. And the Proteas women captain Laura Volvart is hinting at handing at least one of the 3 youngsters in the squad their ODI debuts. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Right, after the 6 o'clock news every single day, we bring you a concise roundup of the top stories from across the continent that played out in the last 24 hours. And we use our team of reporters, analysts and experts to provide a context for you in order for you to stay informed. And we kick off with the Africa Roundup with this story. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, has told the Security Council that violence has become the defining feature of today's world, criticizing the Council for failing to prevent and stop wars.
This is a season of war. This is a time of crisis. From Sudan to Ukraine, from the Sahel to Myanmar, from the Democratic Republic of Congo to Haiti, violence has become the defining currency of our age. While UNHCR is not part of the United Nations response in Gaza, the situation of civilians there, which we thought could not get worse, is reaching new levels of desperation by the day. One where, according to the International Committee of the Red Cross, 120 conflicts rage unabated. Each one of them fueled by the same perverse yet powerful delusion that peace is for the weak.
Soldiers from Malawi, Tanzania and South Africa are reported to be withdrawing from bases in Goma and Sake with all equipment. This in the wake of the government of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo agreeing to come up with a draft peace deal by May 2nd to end the conflict that has wrecked the east of the DRC for more than 3 years. Chris Ochamringa has more.
The DRC government has long accused Rwanda of backing the M23 rebels in order to plunder its minerals. But Rwanda has denied the charge and accused the DRC of supporting a militia of ethnic Hutus who participated in the 1994 Rwandan genocide that targeted the Tutsis. The two countries also committed to facilitate the repatriation of Congolese refugees fled to neighboring countries. They are expected to come up with a draft of the implementation of the peace agreement by May 2nd. But clashes erupted between the M23 rebels and government forces and their allied militia over the weekend. Officials say the fighting happened in a village in the eastern province of South Kivu, violating a ceasefire brokered by the state of Qatar last Wednesday.
North Korea says that it's ready to deepen bilateral cooperation with Namibia beyond the historical political ties. The country's ambassador, Jun Song II, reaffirmed the commitment following a courtesy call on President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah at State House on Monday.
We are also fully prepared to further develop and strengthen those relations, and it is our firm conviction that both countries will work very hard to work for that purposes. I'm very much honored, first of all, to convey the warm greetings from Comrade Kim Jong-un, President of the State Affairs of the DPRK and General Secretary of the Workers' Party of Korea, to Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Namibia, and the President of the Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO. It is my great honor.
Israel faced accusations of breaking international law by refusing to let aid into the Gaza Strip at the International Court of Justice at the start of hearings in The Hague on Monday. Representatives of UN and Palestinians opened the hearings, to which dozens of countries are participating this week. William Denzelo has more.
We know that more than 40 nations are expected to be taking part in these hearings taking place Monday to Friday in The Hague at the UN's top court, the International Court of Justice, including the likes of South Africa, the United States. We are largely expecting voices of condemnation regarding Israel's activities in Gaza and its decisions to block off aid to UNRWA, the UN's refugee agency that provides humanitarian assistance in the form of schooling, medical supplies and food to roughly 2 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
And that's how we come to the end of today's segment of the Africa Roundup. We'll have more for you tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news. Stay with us. So we go to East Africa in a few moments' time to find out what's been making headlines in the region.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
13 minutes past 6 Central African Time. Let's go to East Africa now and looking at some of the top stories in and around the region in our East Africa Wrap segment of the show. Joining us to help reflect on some stories is Dennis Eberu, who's journalist and team leader at Association of Grassroots Journalists Kenya. Dennis, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, and how is South Africa?
We okay. I think it feels like a Monday for us because of the holiday we had yesterday. We had Freedom Day yesterday, so we're easing into the week nicely, though.
It is normally a very long weekend, and catching up, when you go back to work becomes a bit tricky.
Yeah,
but we have to work.
But we survive. Let's look at actually Kenya first. Last year, in an effort by President William Ruto's administration to boost revenue and reduce borrowing, the Kenya Finance Bill 2024 was introduced. The bill was meant to raise and introduce taxes on a range of daily items and services such as internet data, bread, fuel, bank transfers, and even diapers. Of course, after that, we know that hundreds of youthful protesters, mainly Gen Zs, were angered by these measures and they took to the streets in the capital, Nairobi. There were hundreds that were arrested. Others were sadly shot dead. The BBC now claims to have identified members of Kenya's security forces who they say have shot dead anti-tax protesters in the country's parliament last June. Tell us more on this new development.
Thank you so much. We all know, and the world all know, that last year, that was June, when there were calls, from the young people, the Gen Z, for the parliament to and not to pass the controversial finance bill, which led to a demonstration that took place in 38 out of 48 counties. Of course, we've had a lot of conversation, discussion on what happened, because so many young people died until yesterday, when the BBC Africa Eye, the Blood Parliament documentary that was released, and so many Kenyans are really angry about the documentary, because of course we have the IPOA, Independent Police Oversight, and they are mandated to making sure that police officers who involve themselves in a killing of innocent young people in Kenya, and they are brought to books. But surprisingly, since last year, June 25th, when the young people invaded the parliament, and of course, we saw young people being killed, and the expose has really exposed the police officers, and to some point, members of the military forces have been implicated in the shooting and the killing of 3 young people who were unarmed. They were just carrying handkerchief, a mobile phone, and a whistle to make sure that the members of parliament can hear them. And not pass the finance bill. It is so sad. This is there are a lot of conversation around, and we've seen the sad parties that we've seen, even the members of the ruling government. They are now coming out, calling out BBC, saying that that is not incredible news. It is not balanced, and yet BBC have responded, saying that they tried to look for some comment from police, even the Kenya Defence Forces, military, and other government institutions that are mandated in making sure that the lives of Kenyans are served. Yeah.
As you say, that they feel that the police are very militarized in their approach to things. What does it say then in terms of the use of excessive force by security forces in Kenya, and basically crowd control when it comes to protests?
You see, when young people were killed during the long week, demos that happened in Nairobi, the police officers are denied through the Inspector General of Police said, police officers were not using force to disperse these young people. But now the questions were, who is now killing these young people? Because so many young people died by gunshot. And during this BBC expose, yes, we've seen, and as per the documentary, even the people who, the police officers and one military guy who shot and killed, innocent young people, were filmed. Yet they are not yet, responded to these allegations. So hopefully we are now waiting today whether the military forces will have to respond to this. But remember, during the report last year, military officers said that we've not seen any report from IPOA saying that one of our police, one of our military men has been involved in the killing of the innocent protesters.
Let's go to Somalia now, where the Prime Minister, Hamza Abdi Bare, recently reassigned 3 senior ministers in a limited cabinet reshuffle, and it saw him appoint Ahmed Mualim Fiki as the new Minister of Defense from his previous position, where he was Minister of Foreign Affairs. Considering the challenges that Somalia is facing right now, including insecurity, what can we read into this reshuffle?
Yes, Somalia, of course, the political turbulence, insecurities in Somalia, and the Prime Minister, Hamza Abdi Bare, actually on Sunday, he had a reshuffling very senior ministers. Of course, this is just a move to underscore the political turbulences within his administration. Remember, he has been criticized majorly because most of the ministers who appointed people, or the people of Somalia, the largest Somalia Republic, feel that they should not be in office. And remember, the outgoing Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Abdi Salam Dahai, was also now named the Minister for Foreign Affairs. And remember, there has been a lot of criticism because of the style of his leadership, and people feel we've seen these ministers, they have been in leadership for a while now. Why recycle the same people rather than bringing in fresh blood, young people? Of course, there are so many Somalis who are educated and are in a position to take over this leadership, and this has led to Hamza Abdi Bare to at least reshuffle three of his senior ministers who were heavily criticized, and people feel it is now time for them to retire, or rather not to be in civil servant.
Staying there, the preparations are underway as well for Somaliland as the country gears for its commemoration of 34 years since they reclaimed their independence from Somalia. As part of this, police in the country have ordered a crackdown on unauthorized flags and warning citizens that individuals found displaying banners other than the official national flag will face legal action. What do you think this year's commemoration will be like?
Yes, Somaliland, a self-proclaimed, a de facto state in northern part of northeastern part of Somalia. Of course, there has been quite a number of events taking place in preparation for I think it is 18th May preparation. Of course, Somalia is very adamant. They do not want Somaliland to separate from the main Somalia as a country. And remember, there has been calls for the UN to recognize Somaliland as one of the youngest, African state, and of course, the youngest state globally. But of course, there has been calls from Somalia that people should not be seen carrying out the flag of these and your region. I remember last weekend there were a lot of young people and the people of Somaliland on the streets in Hargeisa, which is now the capital city of Somaliland, preparing for a major celebration for its independency. But remember, Somaliland is still part of Somalia. This as per the Prime Minister of Somalia, Hamza Abare, some weeks ago, he said, Somaliland is still part of Somalia, and they will not allow Somaliland to separate from Somalia. So this is a new development, and we shall be waiting and see whether on 18th of May this celebration will take place. I remember Somalia is one of the safest. Somaliland is one of the safest, region in Somalia. We of course know Somalia has been hit with the Islamic militia group, that is Al-Shabaab, that has been terrorizing Somalia, Mogadishu, Kismayu, and Somaliland, which is regarded one of the most safest regions.
Well, let's hope it remains that way, and things do not spill over into that area. As you say, it is one of the safest, and it's been described as a peaceful political transition during last year's presidential election there that took place. Okay, let's leave it there. Dennis, thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much, and have a good morning.
Thanks. Dennis Beda is journalist and team leader at Association of Grassroots Journalists, Kenya.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
An investigation by South Africa's non-profit organization Open Secrets has found that telecoms company MTN has played a role in shutting down the internet during elections and wars in Sudan, Cameroon, Iran, Afghanistan and Uganda, thus enabling governments to silence the opposition.
Interestingly, this isn't just unique to MTN. I think the report also looks at Vodacom DRC as being a proponent of one of these violations, particularly in shutting down the internet during the elections in 2018 and 2019. Autocratic regimes are able to utilize the licenses that they have with these telecom companies, basically to, suppress political dissent. And the result is that many people are left without connectivity. And not only does this affect people's ability to communicate with their loved ones and access vital emergency services, but also at a very basic level of access to information.
The Open Secrets investigator, Ndoro Nduli.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Central African Time. Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, reports that over 3 million children are involved in prostitution globally, while the International Labour Organization estimates that 1 million people are trafficked annually for sexual exploitation. Many victims are lured with false promises of a better future.
We have serious problems, Lulu. One, we had porous borders, easy access of these criminal transnational syndicates coming in and living at ease. Number one. Number two, we also have a problem where some of our law enforcement officers, those who are rogue, who work hand in glove with the syndicates because they give them something in return of them turning a blind eye. Point number three, we have a problem of corruption that leads to us being a playground of this transnational organized crime.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The government of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo have agreed to come up with a draft peace deal by May 2nd to end the conflict that has wrecked the east of the DRC for more than 3 years. The ministers of foreign affairs of both countries signed the declaration in the United States. But fighting broke out between the M23 rebels and government forces just a day after the declaration was signed. Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The commitment to end the conflict in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo was signed in the presence of the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Washington, D.C. Under the agreement, the DRC and Rwanda have committed to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. They also agreed to stop providing military support to non-state armed groups. The DRC government has long accused Rwanda of backing the M23 rebels in order to plunder its minerals. But but Rwanda has denied the charge and accused the DRC of supporting a militia of ethnic Hutus who participated in the 1994 Rwandan genocide that targeted the Tutsis. The two countries also committed to facilitate the repatriation of Congolese refugees who fled to neighboring countries. They are expected to come up with a draft of the implementation of the peace agreement by May 2nd, but clashes erupted between the M23 rebels and government forces and their allied militia over the weekend. Officials say the fighting happened in a village in the eastern province of South Kivu, violating a ceasefire brokered by the state of Qatar last Wednesday. Qatar and the US are mediating talks between the DRC and Rwanda to end the war and facilitate trade deals in the lucrative mining sector for their private firms. Chris Ochamringa, SABC News, Kinshasa.
6:30 now, Central African time it is. Let's say good morning again to Jwalani Tulongwepe with our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, Mozambique, Lesotho and Zimbabwe have been identified as key contributors to mass illegal migration into South Africa. The Border Management Commissioner, Dr. Michael Masiabato, told a media briefing in Pretoria that this has become a norm, especially during the Easter holidays. There are reports that fighting has continued in the Democratic Republic of Congo's North Kivu province. This after the country and Rwanda signed an agreement in Washington to promote peace and economic development over the weekend. And finally, the conclave to elect the 267th Pope will begin next Wednesday after the conclusion of the mourning period for Pope Francis. The closed-door meeting will start inside the Sistine Chapel and will involve some 135 cardinals from across the world. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time to find out what's been happening in the world of sport as we say good morning to Fikile Lingwat.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, guys. It's another sports day. Let's begin with cricket news ongoing in Sri Lanka. India has won the toss and will bat first against the Proteas at R. Premadasa International Stadium in Sri Lanka today. Proteas women captain Laura Volvart has suggested that they could be handing at least one of the three youngsters in the squad their ODI debuts in their first match of the Tri-Series. Coach Mandla Mashimbi called up under-19 stars Garabo Meso and Seshni Naidu, as well as an uncapped all-rounder Miani Smith, for the first time in the 50-over format for the trip. Although the skipper couldn't say with certainty whether they'll start at the Premadasa Stadium, she did say that that's exactly why they are there as World Cup preparations intensify.
Do obviously have the three youngsters with us on this tour, so I would love to see them get a chance throughout the series, and it would be awesome to see some of them getting a chance. I think that's what the series is about as well, is testing out different combinations and seeing what we have sort of in the depth of our squad. Obviously with the World Cup coming up, you want to try things now and sort of settle on a final 11 as you get a bit closer to the event. So I'd love to see some of them having a go.
On to football news. Pyramids FC striker Dodo Elgabas says the unity in the team and support for each other helped them overcome the challenge of playing without large crowds, ultimately securing their spot in the CAF Champions League final. On Friday, however, they bussed in a lot of people to watch the game. Speaking after the 3-2 victory over Orlando Pirates, Elgabas says the issue of lack of crowds is a big challenge.
Yes, it's a big, my friend, very, very hard. If you play in this level of football without fans, it's very difficult. You know, all the big teams in Africa who play these stages of this competition, they have a lot of fans, they have a lot of power. You know, fans give power. But the good thing in this team, we are strong mentally. We are a strong group, and we motivate each other. We set some standard in the dressing room. We set some standards mentally for this team, and I think everybody can see that we develop and we could be one of the big teams in Africa.
On to marathon and athletics. The 2025 London Marathon set a new world record for the number of finishers despite hot conditions for its 45th edition. A total of 56,640 runners crossed the line at the end of the 26.2-mile route. Guinness World Records has confirmed that the number surpassed their previous record of 55.646 set by the New York Marathon in November. Hugh Brayshaw, chief executive of London Marathon Events, said he hoped the high number of finishers inspired people to apply for the 2026 race ballot. Let's end with boxing news. Daniel Dubois and Alexander Usyk will fight to become the undisputed world heavyweight champion at Wembley Stadium on the 19th of July. Brighton Dubois is the IBF champion, with Usyk holding the WBA, Super, WBO and WBC belts. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fire Lengwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's time now to find out what's been happening in the world of business and economics. Good morning, Thabiso Lehuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning. Rating agencies say they're closely monitoring developments in South Africa on the 2025 budget and the economy. Sovereign Africa Ratings believes the Democratic Alliance and Economic Freedom Fighters' challenge on the VAT underscores the critical issue of the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches in fiscal decision-making. The Western Cape High Court issued a court order suspending the planned 0.5 percentage point value-added tax increase that was set to take effect on the 1st of May. Earlier, the Finance Ministry had also withdrawn the increase. The South African Revenue Service has indicated that it's back to the drawing board on the 2025 budget. Zulebanzi Mazia is the Chief Ratings Officer at Sovereign Africa Rating.
While the Finance Minister's team argues that the provision is constitutional, the challenge raises valid concerns about ensuring a robust legislative oversight. So for us as a credit rating agency, we will be closely monitoring the outcome because it could influence perceptions of institutional checks and balances.
Meanwhile, the EFF has welcomed the Western Cape High Court's decision to suspend the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase. The court also overturned the National Assembly's resolution that adopted the report from the Joint Standing Committee on Finance regarding the fiscal framework and revenue proposals earlier this month. A brief in the media in Johannesburg, EFF leader Julius Malema says that the suspension of the VAT increase is a necessary intervention to prevent further economic suffocation.
This decisive court order vindicates the principal stance the EFF has consistently taken to defend the Constitution, the rule of law, and the interests of the poor and working class against political expediency and executive overreach. This victory restores Parliament's constitutional powers as the legislative authority over the public finances, reaffirms the supremacy of the law, and crucially protects millions of South Africans.
South Africa's Department of Trade, Industry and Competition says following public interest, it has extended the deadline for comments on the Draft Transformation Fund by 15 days. The public now has until the 28th of May to comment on the draft concept about plans to create a $5 billion fund that supports black-owned businesses and SMMEs in key sectors like agriculture and energy. Minister Parks Tau says the Transformation Fund is being set up by mainly combining money from existing enterprise and supply development programs. By bringing these funds together, Department spokesperson Yamkela Fanisi says that they hope to accelerate transformation efforts as required by the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act.
We think that key issues that are going to feature in the fund is strong accountability on the funds when we disperse them. We are going to have a proper structure with boards to oversee and with powers to also oversee and to also have check and also possibly have quarterly reports that actually articulate to who did we give the money, where and which sectors, so that we can then be able to make a fair dent, but also be able to account.
Gabon has the backing of around 10 financial institutions to extend the maturities of regional market debt and access fresh financing. This was announced by the Central African Oil Producers Public Accounts Ministry yesterday. Gabon, which saw its World Bank disbursements suspended in January over mounting arrears, is facing an acute squeeze on liquidity that has left it increasingly reliant upon regional capital markets to meet financing needs. In a statement, the ministry said the country wanted to significantly improve the profile of its public debt, reduce the refinancing risk of its outstanding debt, and increase its room for maneuver in the medium term. Oil prices were stable on Monday as investors weighed up uncertainty over trade talks between the United States and China, clouding the outlook for global growth and fuel demand. Brent crude futures were down 15 cents at $66.72 a barrel, marking a week-on-week decrease of over 1% last week on concerns about the impact of tariffs on the global economy. Analysts say the US-China trade war is dominating investor sentiment and moving oil prices. Markets have been rocked by conflicting signals from US President Donald Trump and Beijing over what progress was being made to de-escalate a trade war that threatens to sap global growth. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 606. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 60. Kenya, 128 shilling 527. In Zambia, 27 kwacha 89. The BRICS countries, Brazil, the dollar there, 5 real 67. In Russia, 82 rubles 34. India, 85 rupees 20. China, 7 yuan 29. And in South Africa, the dollar is trading at 18 rand 61. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. A look at commodities markets now. Gold, $3,310. Platinum, $983 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $65.49 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabiso Lohoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. G20 in Africa. Exclusive to Channel Africa.
All right, our G20 fact for this morning is each G20 summit has its own custom-designed logo and theme song, and some are surprisingly artistic. For example, the 2016 China Summit featured a logo inspired by a traditional Chinese bridge symbolizing global connectivity. Meanwhile, Indonesia's 2022 summit had a techno-style theme song that went viral among local youth for its unexpectedly catchy beat. And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
Right, it's 6:43 Central African time, and it's time for us to go to Johannesburg now. During a recent visit to Johannesburg's Central Business District, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa acknowledged the city's state of dysfunction and announced the formation of a working group to assist the mayor. However, there is widespread public skepticism about the move, given a history of government promises that have failed to deliver real change. The key question now, how can the city of Johannesburg improve service delivery and rebuild public trust, all while grappling with severe financial pressures and governance challenges? Channel Africa business reporter Innocent Simosa has more.
The city once hailed as Africa's economic hub, Johannesburg, is now deep in crisis due to infrastructure decay, lack of basic service delivery, and financial mismanagement. Associate in Dispute Resolution Practice spokesperson Charles Green outlines legal frameworks or processes in place to address non-performance by municipal officials in relation to their official duties.
The responsibilities and functions of municipal officials are contained in a few pieces of legislation, right? Which basically says this is your mandate. A useful starting point is Section 195 of the Constitution, which basically provides basic values, principles that govern public administration. And these apply throughout all spheres of government, but it also include your municipal context. So in the municipal context, the national legislation that's enacted to ensure that these principles are adhered to, and it provides for further powers and responsibilities of municipal officials, is the Municipal Finance Management Act, right? So essentially it provides a basis for this is your mandate, and it also says, look, if you fail to reach your mandate, these are the consequences. An example is Section 32 of the MFMA, which provides that, look, municipal officials, you will be liable for unauthorized expenditure. So essentially money that is spent in absence of an empowering provision or in absence of legislation actually allowing you to spend that money.
He says that although they are protected against liabilities to third parties, the municipality can still recover losses and damages caused by negligence.
Municipal officials are protected against liability to third parties for loss and damages that result from bona fide exercise of power or the performance of a function under Section 175 of the MFMA that does not prevent the municipality from recovering losses or damages that have been caused by deliberate or negligent acts. So very important judgment, and it actually provides an additional layer of accountability for municipal officials. And they'll have to think, quite hard about the risks of acting in a manner that deliberately or negligently causes loss to a municipality.
But what legal tools or reforms can state-owned entities use to improve service delivery and public trust given current financial and governance constraints? Charles Green explains.
So state-owned entities provide vital goods and services to the country at large, such as electricity, water and transportation. Over the years, we have unfortunately seen a steady decline of SOEs, which has inevitably resulted in the failure to deliver basic goods and services to the majority of the country. These problems stem from lack of financial power and a lack of good governance, which we saw quite explicitly at state capture. The issue with the lack of finances is that SOEs do not have the financial power to expand, maintain, and upgrade critical infrastructure. This was evident last year in Johannesburg, with the relevant public institutions that are mandated to provide basic service delivery confirming that they do not have the necessary funds to commission all the required upgrades. The consequences, obviously, if unattended, are dire. For example, load shedding, day zero in Johannesburg, where there may not be any water.
Green says the relationship between SOEs and municipalities needs to be mended.
The first is the interplay between SOEs and the municipality. The relationship between SOEs and municipalities needs to be mended, and appropriate mechanisms need to be put in place to ensure that payments are made efficiently and properly from municipalities to SOEs. For example, it was estimated in December 2021 that municipalities across the country owed Eskom an amount of 107 billion. And then the effect, obviously, is a crippling effect on Eskom because they still need to deliver outputs, but they don't get the financial money that they actually owed.
As Johannesburg grapples with growing public frustration, experts believe that stronger accountability, legal reforms, and better collaboration between municipalities and state-owned entities are critical to reversing the city's decline. For now, residents are left hoping that the promises made translated into real action before Africa's once proud economic hub falls even further into crisis. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Simosa in Johannesburg.
The introduction of drones and body-worn camera technology at South Africa's ports of entry have led to the apprehension of 6,000 individuals attempting illegal entry into the country during the Easter weekend. Authorities also seized 4 vehicles, cannabis, alcohol, and other contraband, along with 8 passports containing fraudulent visa stamps. Additionally, 2 Border Management Authority officials were arrested for corruption allegations. Channel Africa reporter Michael Mbewe attended a briefing by the Border Management Authority, or BMA, in Pretoria on Monday.
The introduction of surveillance drones as well as the body-worn cameras has been a game changer for border management work, earning praise from members of the intelligence community for its clear as well as measurable impact.
South Africa's Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, Dr. Michael Masiapato, says scores were nabbed in this year's period, 61% up from the same period last year, for various reasons. The drone and body-worn camera technology were unveiled 2 weeks ago at a joint media briefing collaboration between BMA and the Department of Home Affairs to assist in stopping illegal migration at South Africa porous borders. Masiapato explains.
Just in the period of 10 days, we have been able to intercept and apprehend a total of 6,253 persons who were attempting to enter and or exit South Africa illegally. This is an increase of 61% compared to the 2024 Easter operation interceptions, which were sitting at around 3,841. Of these 6,253, about 4,795 of them were undocumented. And of course, about 1,059 were undesirables, and 403 were found to be inadmissible for various reasons. And some of those reasons were people with fraudulent visas, or they just failed to produce the yellow fever certificates while they were coming from yellow fever infested countries.
He says the majority of migrants are from 3 neighboring countries.
Even in this 2025 Easter period, a consistent pattern of top 3 nationalities which continue to undermine our immigration laws remains the Zimbabweans at 2,019, followed by Basutus at 1,921, and then followed by Mozambicans and at 1,143. And the remainder of 1,170 were shared amongst the Swatis and other nationalities.
The operation also saw the confiscation of stolen vehicles, contraband, alcohol, passports, and other illegal items.
During this Easter period, the border guards successfully intercepted 4 motor vehicles and 1 motorcycle which were attempted to be smuggled out of South Africa. A 22-seater minibus or midibus, as well as a sedan passenger vehicle, were impounded at Beda port of entry after the vehicles were used for aiding and abetting illegal migration. All these were handed over to the South African Police Services detectives for their further processing. Further, 5,181 kgs of cannabis to the value of 129,550 was confiscated and handed over to customs for further processing. 8 passports endorsed with fraudulent stamps were confiscated at Lebombo port of entry. Other interceptions include 879 items of counterfeit alcohol, 3 bales of branded clothing, and 50 pairs of counterfeit shoes. 34 boxes of counterfeit cigarettes were intercepted as they were being smuggled into South Africa.
Corrupt officials were also not spared.
When it comes to counter-corruption measures, we just want to indicate that just in the 10 days of these operations, 2 immigration officials were arrested at Beitbridge for collaborating with facilitators attempting to allow the movement of undocumented individuals into or entering into South Africa illegally.
BMA's Deputy Commissioner responsible for operations, Major General David Chilembe, said the information shared showed BMA's commitment to transparency.
We have openly shared both our achievement and the areas that require further improvement. This transparency is a reflection of our ongoing commitment to accountability, innovation, and continuous improvement in how we deliver our mandate as the Border Management Authority.
He affirmed the nation of sticking to their mandate.
As a border management authority, we remain resolute in our mission to secure South Africa's borders for development. We aim to protect our sovereignty, our economy, and the safety of all people who reside in this beautiful country.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
The polls have opened in Canada's election that will determine the country's next prime minister in a race that could be shaped by an acute anger towards US President Donald Trump. In January, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's popularity seemed sure to sink the Liberal Party's prospects in the federal election, trailing the Conservative Party by some 25 points. But Trump's return to the White House and his threats to annex Canada as America's 51st state, while straining their familial, economic and diplomatic relationship, appears to fuel the liberal resurgence in a country that currently also chairs the G7. Sharon Bryce-Pease picks up the story regarding the early favourites, the Conservatives, which have seen their massive polling advantage evaporate in a matter of months.
It's not that commonplace that the leader of a foreign country has such an outsized presence in another country's election. But US President Donald Trump has managed to do just that, and in so doing appears to have boosted the Liberal Party's prospects when just 4 months ago the Conservative Party appeared to be coasting to a certain victory amid the unpopularity of former Liberal leader and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But with Trudeau's resignation in January and Mark Carney's replacing him as Liberal leader and then Prime Minister in March, the political tide has shifted, in part because of comments like these from the leader of Canada's powerful southern neighbour.
One thing we're going to be demanding is we're going to be demanding respect from other nations. Canada, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. We're not going to have that anymore. We can't do it. I don't know if it's good for them. As you probably know, I say you can always become a state. And if you're a state, we won't have a deficit. We won't have to tariff you, et cetera, et cetera. But Canada has been very tough to deal with over the years. And it's not fair that we should have a $200 billion or $250 billion deficit. We don't need them to make our cars, and they make a lot of them. We don't need their lumber because we have our own forests, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need their oil and gas. We have more than anybody.
Canada's CBC News has Liberals edging Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives by almost 43% to 39% in their polling average, a massive shift fueled in part by Canadians' antipathy towards the US president, his trade wars and threats of annexation among others, that has seen a surge in Canadian patriotism. Carney, a former central bank governor, has pitched himself as the man best suited to confront Trump in times of economic uncertainty.
It is true that President Trump has betrayed Canada. He's betrayed Canada. And he has ruptured the global economy. Our old relationship with the United States is over, unfortunately. And America's leadership of the global economy is over. And this is a tragedy. This is still in play, but it is a tragedy. It is also our new reality. We have to recognize it.
His main rival, Poilievre, a member of parliament since 2004, has had to fend off criticism from his political opponents that he was a Trump-like version of conservative, while arguing that Canada should choose change after a decade of Liberal governance.
We need to put Canada first for a change, with a new Conservative government that will axe taxes, unleash our resource production, build pipelines, secure our border, rebuild our armed forces, and stand up to Donald Trump from a position of strength. We are voting for change because we love this country and we want every single person to have the promise of Canada that anyone who works hard can have a great life in a beautiful, affordable home on a safe street under our proud flag. That's the change we need. That's the hope we offer. Now let's vote to bring it home.
And while domestic issues of high prices, crime and a housing crisis have been key talking points in the campaign, the Trump factor is hard to ignore. David Perry is president of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute.
President Trump tends to suck up almost all the oxygen here, and I think, unfortunately, the wider set of very broad and extensive and previously very productive, very collegial relationships with the United States and Americans more broadly are getting looked at through the prism of the relationship between Canadian politicians and the American president and his administration narrowly.
That report there by Sherwin Bryce-Beese in New York. It's time for us to get into the top of the hour, the second hour of the program, because it's almost 7 o'clock Central African time, and you're listening to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective.
And good morning all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa. That's where we're coming to you live from. My name is Asanda Beda. Let's take a chance to thank the team as well on production. Stagazelo Dlamini, Joey Lukhodi, Pumudzo Ramakaza. On technical production, Nanda Khoza. On news, Dwalani Tulongwepe. Economics news, Tabiso Lehuku. Sports news, Fikile Lingwati. And social media, Talent Butelezi. And on that note, it is time to say good morning again to Dwalani Tulongwepe for our news, and then after that we'll be Fikile Lingwati with our sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Mozambique, Lesotho and Zimbabwe have been identified as key contributors to mass illegal migration into South Africa. The Border Management Commissioner, Dr. Michael Masiabato, told a media briefing in Cape Town that this has become a norm, especially during the Easter holiday. Over 6,000 people were arrested while attempting to enter or exit the country through ports of entry this Easter period. Masiabato says the successful interceptions can be attributed to the use of new technology, including drones and body cameras.
Even in this 2025 Easter period, a consistent pattern of top 3 nationalities which continue to undermine our immigration laws remains the Zimbabweans at 2,019, followed by Basutus at 1,921, and then followed by Mozambicans at 1,143. And the remainder of 1,170 were shared amongst the Swatis and other nationalities.
The national spokesperson of South Africa's African National Congress, Mahlengi Bengu Mutsiri, says the call for a minister's resignation can only be justified if there is a failure to adhere to specific policies. This follows the Economic Freedom Fighters' call for Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to resign after a court ruling suspended the VAT increase set to take effect on Thursday. Bengu Mutsiri says the resignation call is not justified.
Any resignation that gets occasioned must be triggered by a particular policy, a particular law, or a particular ethical standard. So we're not certain that that is correct because there's never been a time where the current Minister of Finance did disobey his oath to office unless we can be presented with that particular thing.
There are reports that fighting has continued in the Democratic Republic of Congo's North Kivu province. This after the country and Rwanda signed an agreement in Washington to promote peace and economic development over the weekend. The accord, signed at a ceremony with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, is seen as part of a diplomatic push to end violence after M23 rebels advance in eastern Congo. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have been displaced in recent months as the M23 rebels seize large parts of mineral-rich territory in eastern DRC. The DRC's Foreign Affairs Minister is Therese Kayikwamba Wagner.
For us, the urgency of this initiative is not theoretical, it is human. We signed this declaration of principles not as a symbolic gesture but as a political commitment, a reaffirmation of principles enshrined in international law and most recently echoed in the UN Security Council Resolution 2773, a resolution calling for the immediate, unconditional and verifiable withdrawal of all foreign troops from sovereign territory of the DRC.
The conclave to elect the 267th Pope will begin next Wednesday after the conclusion of the mourning period for Pope Francis. The closed-door meeting will start inside the Sistine Chapel and involve some 135 cardinals from across the world. It follows the death of Pope Francis, who died at the age of 88 on Easter Monday and whose funeral was held on Saturday. There is no timescale as to how long it will take to elect the next Pope, but the previous two conclaves held in 2005 and 2013 lasted just 2 days. And finally, Canada's public broadcaster CBC News projects that the Liberal Party will form the next government after yesterday's hotly contested poll in which US President Donald Trump loomed large. Prime Minister Mark Carney, who replaced Justin Trudeau in March, is expected to lead the new government in a stunning turnaround after the Conservative Party, led with Pierre Poilievre. This will allow Liberals to form their fourth consecutive government in Canada, but whether it's a minority or majority, government is yet to be determined. Sharon Bryce-Pease has the story.
CBC News projects the Liberals will retain power in a stunning setback for Conservatives, who enjoyed a commanding 25-point lead 4 months ago. But even before the unpopular Trudeau's exit, the fortunes for Liberals shifted with President Donald Trump back in the White House, and his belittling attacks against the outgoing Premier, his rhetoric around Canada becoming the 51st state, and the imposition of tariffs that fueled Canadian patriotism and a surge in Liberal support. It's unclear if Carney will command an outright parliamentary majority, which requires at least 172 seats in the 343-seat House of Commons.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headlines, CAF President Dr. Patrice Motsepe, who chaired the meeting and announced the 5 newly appointed CAF vice presidents. We'll hear from him later. Zimbabwe junior golf team has qualified for the Toyota Junior Golf World Cup 2025. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
The International Court of Justice has begun hearings to assess whether Israel's decision to prohibit cooperation with the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, is lawful. Over 40 countries are scheduled to deliver submissions during proceedings at the UN's principal judicial body. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
During Monday afternoon's session at the United Nations top court at the International Court of Justice, Malaysia's representative accused Israel of ignoring its obligations under the UN Charter. That was a point raised by UN representatives directly at the start of proceedings on Monday, accusing Israel of not doing enough to protect UN facilities or aid workers in Gaza, also saying that Israel had an obligation under the UN Charter to provide greater support for UN agencies. We also heard directly from Palestinian representatives who said that Israel's actions were akin to creating an endless death loop for civilians in Gaza. They said that because of Israel's decisions to withdraw support for UNRWA, the UN agency that provides medical food and schooling for roughly 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, that scenarios had occurred, including children in need of amputations, not having as much as a single painkiller to go through those procedures. Now, during this week, we're expected to hear from roughly 40 nations, including South Africa, but Israel is not among them. Instead, they are providing a written defence to the top UN court, in which they say that UNRWA operates on Israel's sovereign territory, therefore they have the right to withhold funding if they choose. They also accuse the UN agency of bias and being infiltrated by Hamas. The UN has responded to that, saying that they largely refute it, but there is an ongoing investigation. It's up to the UN, not Israel, to make such a determination. And while this hearing could take a matter of days, I'm told by ICJ sources that it could be months for the ICJ panel of 15 judges to come up with its advisory opinion. William Denslow, SABC News, Brussels.
A high court in South Africa has suspended a 0.5% VAT increase set for May 1st, 2025, after a challenge by the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters political parties. Commissioner of the South African Revenue Service, or SARS, Edward Kieswetter, has welcomed the ruling, urging vendors and consumers to maintain the 15% VAT rate. The country's finance minister, Enoch Godongwana, withdrew the hike last week, with the court ratifying the decision on April 27th of 2025.
SARS has welcomed the decision because it brings legal certainty. Some of the issues are still up for debate and will be ventilated in court. And SARS is not necessarily a view on other than always honoring the outcomes of legal process. Now, what the court order yesterday helps us is in the administration of the VAT Act. And uncertainty or lack of clarity is not helpful for us as the administrator, neither is it helpful for taxpayers and traders or vendors. And ultimately, it could compromise consumers at the point of sale. And so the advice that we have given to vendors, notwithstanding the fact that we know this has some challenges for them because many vendors and retailers have already adjusted their system. They've sent out advisors to their different clients about the adjustment. They now have to not only reverse this, they also have to adjust their systems. And what we are saying is, hopefully, most of them will be able to do so, and the large ones have given us the assurance that they will unwind the adjustment and stick with the 15%. We certainly are pulling back on the implementation of the 15.5%. But we have also received feedback from some vendors that it'll be a challenge for them to make the reversal in time. Here we are advising consumers to be vigilant that at the point of sale, they must make sure their invoice reflects a 15% VAT inclusion and not a 15.5% inclusion. The consumer has to insist for a manual adjustment at the point of sale. And that's why our public notice has also drawn attention to consumers to be vigilant. We believe most of the large retailers and service providers will make the adjustment in time, but as is the case with the best plans, we suspect that a few of the smaller vendors may not be able to make these adjustments. And there, a vigilance at the point of sale, an insistence on a manual adjustment or by some mutual agreement to ensure that the effective increase that is imputed is only 15%. We will continue to work with vendors to make them aware, make it easy for them to comply. But over the next few months, we will increase our level of vigilance. We have shared with the public before, we have risk detection AI that we use. We will calibrate that AI to have a look at a higher sample of VAT returns to make sure, in fact, that the 15% is complied with.
Somalia's Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Bare has announced a major cabinet reshuffle, notably appointing Ahmed Mualim Fiki Ahmed as the country's new Minister of Defense. The changes come as Somalia intensifies its fight against al-Shabaab's insurgency amid ongoing security challenges and political tensions. Now, whilst no official reasons were given for the reshuffle, analysts suggest that it does reflect growing pressure on the government to make gains against militant groups ahead of planned security transitions. To help us unpack the significance of these developments and what they might signal for Somalia's political and security landscape, we're now joined by political analyst and researcher Kwezi Ngqibiza. Kwezi, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us.
Good morning, Peter, and thank you for the opportunity.
So what do you make of the timing and the nature of this cabinet reshuffle, especially the change at the Defense Ministry?
Well, I mean, Somalia announced almost a couple of weeks ago the intention to actually go into elections. These are very historic and important elections. They are going to be the first time elections whereby Somalis have an opportunity to actually elect an executive or an administration of their choice using a system of direct elections as opposed to previous representative elections whereby traditional leaders would have a hand in picking and choosing who becomes the spokesperson of the administration. So these are very important elections. I think that across the political landscape in that country, there is an intention to actually make sure that all of the relevant preparations are put into place. Chief amongst those elections, as you can imagine, would be the provision of security in order to make sure that they actually occur in an environment that allows for the expression of the will of the people to take place. So the Minister of Defense then becomes very critical. But there have been recent developments, Peter, that many people have actually not focused on, which has been the acrimonious relationship between the Somali government as it is currently constituted with the biggest provider of security in Somalia, which is the African Union. They have had serious clashes in terms of how does the African Union characterize the state of security in Somalia. This has led, amongst other things, in the firing of the deputy representative of the African Union and a change at that level, which basically, I think, more than anything else, reflects an important milestone on the part of Somalia to say that we want to take care of our security as a country in transition, as opposed to rely on external goodwill actors, including the African Union.
So for the longest time, al-Shabaab controlled pretty much everything outside of Mogadishu. What is the situation now?
Well, by and large, there are huge swaths of land in Somalia broadly that are under contestation, meaning that the security forces of the government, although they claim de jure responsibility for security, but that authority is actually being, I won't say questioned, but being contested by al-Shabaab that continues to seek dominance over the military and civic authority of districts within the country. The reality of the matter is that whilst everybody is actually happy to only look at the al-Shabaab as only but a terrorist organization, it does in a certain level continue to actually present an alternative to actually the military and civic authority, because there's an importance to be made here, Peter, is that whilst by law and in terms of the transition that continues to take place in Somalia until we have got proper representatives, you could hold a territory in terms of military, but you could also fail to provide civic authority, meaning other than just simply being a security force, but you are actually providing development, you are providing humanitarian services, you are providing social services, you are providing political legitimacy. These are the territories or areas where the Al-Shabaab continues to either provide an alternative or contest government in terms of saying that you are the security occupying force, but we are not able to provide all of these other services, and we as Al-Shabaab can do things differently.
So, as you were saying, the Defense Ministry, then a key ministry, and the appointment of Ahmed Mualim Fiki Ahmed also key. What do we know about him, actually? We know that he's a familiar figure in Somali politics, but tell us a little bit more about his background, his experience, and especially towards security.
Well, he is indeed somebody who's familiar in the broader Somali elite politics, in that he has served in the national security sector, he has served in the foreign policy sector, which means that he's quite familiar with the rumble and tumble of politics in Somalia. But when it comes to security issues, he's also relatively well acquainted with the issues. But I think that it is important to actually highlight something. Being appointed into a political role in Somalia means that you are considered as an important fixer to the dilemma that many administrations past have faced, which is the extent to which you are being representative of the various clan dynamics. Now, clans are very influential in you being appointed, but perhaps more importantly, in the extent to which you are able to carry out your responsibilities. His featuring at this point in time might communicate that indeed he does have a constituency that seeks to see him play a role. But it could also mean that there is a push internally for a more representative government, a government that could be allowed to do the necessary things that need to be done in order to make sure that we deliver a secure environment for elections. So I think that it could signal a positive response, but perhaps we also need to ask the unmentionable, which is what then happens to the person that he replaces? Was he put into another role, meaning that he was useful but did not accommodate clan coexistence? At this point in time, we don't know where exactly this particular minister who has vacated has been placed, which means that there are technical skills that would have been recognized as being possessed by Fiki that were needed in order to actually make sure that this particular administration prepares for this important national and milestone event, which are elections.
All right. So, is he up for the job? Essentially, I guess at the end of the day, because Al-Shabaab have been a really tough nut to crack.
You know, Peter, this is a very important question and a very important time to be asking this question. The reality of the matter, if you look at the combination of two skills that are apparent as being possessed by Fiki vis-a-vis the task at hand, he has a national security background, but also has got diplomatic experience. And if you refer back to the introductory point that I made of the government in Mogadishu really has got an image problem. I mean, the person who was fired from the African Union was accused of being an Al-Shabaab backer because of comments he had made in the routine deliberations between the African Union and the United Nations at the United Nations. So Somalia came out and said that they reject the representation that has been made of the security situation, the level of preparedness for elections, and so on and so forth. And they actually pushed for this individual to actually be removed. So by appointing somebody with a national security background, but with also diplomatic nuance, as it were, on their part, it means that they do want to take hold of the security sector, but at the same time, they want the international community to go with them on how they continue to reform and prepare this very important cog in the broader governmental institutions in preparation for elections. So as to whether Fiki is the right person for that particular responsibility or particular role is still to be seen, one, on the extent to which they continue to keep up to the timetable of reforming the armed forces. Secondly, the extent to which they are in a position to actually communicate and take on board the international community that has been a very important partner previously, and that international community being either the United Nations or the African Union. Those two will be the major metrics we will use to actually judge whether this was an opportune or an appropriate choice as per the challenge of preparing for elections.
As you were saying, new format for these elections, which means instead of this representative story, each vote counts. But it sounds like because of the security concerns, it may be that some people are disenfranchised.
That is correct. The continent, as you can imagine, Peter, has had too many of the stories whereby we do know that the basic minimum for election, which is making sure that, one, you extend the vote to everyone in the country. That vote is protected. That individual or the circumstances in which they undertake the vote is not in any way going to be influenced by regional, external, or even domestic security, insecurity, as it were. So where we are at this point in time, I think that almost much investment is being made, both internationally, regionally, to support the domestic national initiative of the government of Somalia to actually make sure that these elections occur. You and I, Peter, have had many conversations around this. The reality of the matter is that we'll go for the basic minimum standard, which is, did the elections even take place? As to whether they really were free, as to whether they really were according to some regional, national even standard of fairness, that will be something you and I will talk about a few weeks after. But the reality of the matter is that this event must take place. It must be considered credible. It must be considered as allowing Somalis to express themselves, to give political legitimacy to whatever the outcome might be. At this point in time, I think it's very early for us to actually say with certainty that they are not up to the task. They don't have a history of being able to do this sort of thing. But we are all working as the international community to help them, accompany them, and ensure that we imbue the process with the relevant resources and legitimacy.
All right, so beyond the security sector, does this reshuffle hint at any deeper political shifts within the Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre's government?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that he has felt compelled to act in order to address domestic or even international concerns. But at the same time, it is expected to be routine, Peter, in that you are never going to have elections as historic as these ones and expect that you are going to approach them with the same level of political configuration. Indeed, I would like to imagine that the Prime Minister is actually making this particular move in order to show up the credibility of the administration, but the technical know-how in order to be able to actually amass domestic and external legitimacy, credibility, to actually present an election that will be considered as a full expression of the will of the people. Overall, Pete, I think to summarize, a reshuffle of this nature can only be assessed to the extent to which we see differences in how the government of Somalia relates to the broader administrations. You'd recall that in Somalia you've got regional administration. So we need to be focusing now on assessing, are regional administrations having confidence in the security defense offering of the administration in Mogadishu? Secondly, are regional and international actors inspired to be confident that the administration in Mogadishu seeks to see a different and a qualified electoral process.
And the election itself, what might we expect in terms of who will run the country?
Well, I think many of us have been focusing on the event of elections and, of course, being considered or concerned about the security situation. But, Peter, there's been a number of very interesting developments pertaining to Al-Shabaab itself. I mean, Al-Shabaab has, in the last couple of weeks, positioned itself as people that actually want to contest these elections. They have met and actually announced that they are going to be, or rather, they are not opposed to the elections, but they are actually interested in speaking with regional administrations. Now, if we look at where Somalia is and where it is coming from, regional administrations are very critical in the administration of the country. Forget about political legitimacy emerging from elections. So if Al-Shabaab, which has been a bane against security in that country, is currently reconfiguring its own self in order to be impactful on the administration of the country, this is major, because what it actually means is that whatever theocratic approach that has led to them justifying their terror, their extremism, this could be taking a moderation. This could be undergoing a moderation whereby Al-Shabaab as a grouping considers itself as having a constituency to serve, and that constituency could actually find expression in an election. So these are very critical times, not just simply at a security point of government, but also on the moderation of Al-Shabaab.
Kwezi, always great talking to you. Your analysis greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Thank you. That's political analyst and researcher Kwezi Mgqibiza giving us his take on the Somali cabinet reshuffle. And that brings our time to 7:30, which means it's time for your news headlines with Jwalane Tulo Ngwebe.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, over 6,000 illegal immigrants have been arrested while attempting to enter or exit South Africa during the Easter period. The Border Management Commissioner, Dr. Michael Masiapato, says the successful interceptions can be attributed to the use of new technology, including drones and body cameras. Police in northeast Nigeria say 26 civilians have been killed when their truck drove over a roadside bomb close to the border with Cameroon. And finally, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has declared a 3-day full ceasefire in the war with Ukraine to mark the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Soviet Union in the Second World War. The Kremlin said the ceasefire would run from the morning of the 8th of May until the 11th of May, which coincides with the end of World War II. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
All right, let's find out about Zimbabwe's junior golf team having qualified for the Toyota Junior Golf World Cup 2025. Of course, that and more coming up now with Fikile Lingwadi as he gives us our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Let's start off with football news. Africa's football's governing body, CAF Executive Committee, met in Accra, Ghana, the weekend ahead of the final matches of the CAF African Schools Football Championship. CAF President Dr. Patrice Motsepe, who chaired the meeting, announced 5 new CAF Vice Presidents. The newly elected Vice Presidents are CAF Vice President is Fauzi Legja from Morocco, Meked Okraku from Ghana, Vice President, the third one, Pierre-Alain Mongegui from Gabon, and Bestine Kazati Ditamala from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mr. Faisal Sidat from Mozambique, and additionally, Dr. Motsepe announced that Mr. Yassine Idris Diallo, President of Federation of Ivory Coast, has been co-opted onto the CAF Executive Committee. The CAF Executive Committee also approved the names to fill vacant positions on several CAF committees. Mamelodi Sundowns and national team superfan Mamello Maka is looking forward to the Total Energies CAF Africa Cup of Nations AFCON Morocco 2025. The biennial continental tournament kicks off on the 21st of December and will conclude on the 18th of January 2026. Maka says Bafana Bafana are on A level.
All roads lead to Morocco. It will be my first time being in Morocco. I'm looking forward to that, especially, being inspired by the performance of Bafana Bafana. Nothing beats that. They are on the A level, and the whole country is looking forward to that. Yeah, the two countries will, the whole continent will come together.
Meanwhile, Kaizer Chiefs and national team superfan Masilo Machaka believes the country's continental representatives, Mamelodi Sundowns and Orlando Pirates in the CAF Champions League, have set a good tone and adds a great experience for Bafana Bafana to compete during the AFCON.
They compete on the continental stage because you could even see it brings stability and also an experience of what the continental stages could do for Bafana Bafana. Now we don't even have to panic. We know the players to choose, who to choose, and who to represent Bafana Bafana, as they did well as well in Cote d'Ivoire. But I can tell you this time around, we are going to Morocco. Nothing else, my brother. I think this will be Hugo Bro's goodbye, if I'm not mistaken, bringing the trophy back home to South Africa. But I don't think we'll have to leave because we still have a World Cup to look into. So, to me, this is the right moment for us as South Africans.
And on to golf news. Zimbabwe junior golf team comprising of Thomas Sinclair, Tanaka Chatora, Brendan M. and Tawana Mangoma have qualified for the Toyota Junior Golf World Cup 2025 after coming second at the All-Africa Junior Golf Team Championship in Tunisia. The team was part of 15 other countries who were taking part in the annual Continental Championship for junior golfers. Zimbabwe managed to qualify for the second time after they also came second to South Africa last year. With only the top two countries in the boys and girls categories booking a ticket to the Global Championship, which will be held in Japan in October, Zimbabwe boys team had 882 points, 18 over par. South Africa, which won the tournament, had 842 points, 22 under par. Shutt was the best placed individual performances after he finished fourth with rounds of 74, 72, 73 and 70 for a total of 289 as Chatora was on position 6. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fidel Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege.
So the artist that I just played now went by the name A.B. Cresto. So A standing for Alfred, B for Benjamin. What's your take on people having two names? Is it because maybe you can't decide on a name?
I've heard people saying that they are named because of whatever that was happening around.
These are all the season now. I'm sure now a baby born in the Eastern Cape is called Nama Tarif.
You see now? Or it was a born baby when it was, what do you call these things we used to pay for men driving?
Nama Itol.
Nama Itol, listen.
Well, Nama Confident is leaving.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Okay. 7:37. It's time to find out what's happening in the business and economics news. Here's Thabiso Lehug.
Business news on Channel Africa. The Perspective.
Thanks, Sir Peter, and good morning. Ratings agencies say they're closely monitoring developments in South Africa on the 2025 budget and the economy. Sovereign Africa Ratings believes that the Democratic Alliance and Economic Freedom Fighters' challenge on the VAT underscores the critical issue of the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches in fiscal decision-making. The Western Cape High Court issued a court order suspending the planned 0.5 percentage point value-added tax increase that was set to take effect on the 1st of May. Earlier, the Finance Ministry had also withdrawn the increase. The South African Revenue Service has indicated that it's back to the drawing board on the 2025 budget. Zwelibanzi Mazia is the Chief Ratings Officer at Sovereign Africa Ratings.
While the Finance Minister's team argues that the provision is constitutional, the challenge raises valid concerns about ensuring a robust legislative oversight. So for us as a credit rating agency, we will be closely monitoring the outcome because it could influence perceptions of institutional checks and balances.
South Africa's Department of Trade, Industry and Competition says following public interest, it has extended the deadline for comments on the draft transformation fund by 15 days. The public now has until the 28th of May to comment on the draft concept about plans to create a $5 billion fund that supports black-owned businesses and SMEs in key sectors like agriculture and energy. Minister Pakstau says the transformation fund is being set up mainly combining money from existing enterprise and supply development programs. By bringing these funds together, department spokesperson Yamkela Fanisi says that they hope to accelerate transformation efforts as required by the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Act.
We think that key issues that are going to feature in the fund is strong accountability on the funds when we disperse them. We're going to have a proper structure with boards to oversee and with powers to also oversee and to also have check and also possibly have quarterly reports that actually articulate to who did we give the money, where and which sectors, so that we can then be able to make a fair dent, but also be able to account.
In support of the value-added tax increase in South Africa, the EFF has welcomed the Western Cape High Court's decision to suspend the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase. The court also overturned the National Assembly's resolution that adopted the report from the Joint Standing Committee on Finance regarding the fiscal framework and revenue proposals earlier this month. Briefing the media in Johannesburg, EFF leader Julius Malema says the suspension of the VAT increase is a necessary intervention to prevent further economic suffocation.
This decisive court order vindicates the principal stance the EFF has consistently taken to defend the Constitution, the rule of law, and the interests of the poor and working class against political expediency and executive overreach. This victory restores Parliament's constitutional powers as the legislative authority over the public finances, reaffirms the supremacy of the law, and crucially protects millions of South Africans.
Farmers say above average rainfall last week across most of Côte d'Ivoire's main cocoa growing regions is expected to boost the development of the April to September mid-crop. Côte d'Ivoire, the world's top cocoa producer, has entered its April to mid-November rainy season, a period when showers are abundant and often heavy. Farmers say that regular rainfall through May would help the development of young small pods that will be ready to harvest in August and September, providing a boost in production at the tail end of the mid-crop. Stocks ticked sideways while the dollar headed towards its largest monthly fall for years, as investors braced for the trade war to be felt in earnings and economic data. U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs have rattled faith in U.S. assets. The dollar slipped overnight when U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said it was up to China to de-escalate tariffs, which sit at 125% for most U.S. exports to China. The dollar in South Africa, will start in Nigeria, is trading at 1,000 Naira 606, Botswana 13.60, Kenya 128 shilling 527, and Zambia 27 kwacha 89. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5.67. In Russia, 82 rubles 34. India, 85 rupees 20. China, 7 yuan 29. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 18 rand 61. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Commodities markets, gold at $3,310, platinum at $983 per ounce, Brent crude oil is at $65.49 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hogu.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Kodi mumadziwa bwino kuwerenga ndi kuyankhula chinyanja? Mumakonda ntchito ya wireless? Mumafuna mutagwira ntchito m'dziko la South Africa? Nanga muli ndi mapepala okulolezani kugwira ntchito mu South Africa? Ngati muli ndi yankho la zonsezi, ndiye kuti muli ndi mwayi ogwira ntchito kuno ku Channel Africa. Tumizani CV yanu ndi mawu anu kuno ku Channel Africa ku email ya newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Chonde ngati simunalandire uthenga kuchokera ku Channel Africa nyengo ya masiku 14 pambuyo potumiza CV yanu, ndiye kuti simunasankhidwe. Channel Africa, kalilole wa Africa.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
7:44. Let's take a look at this story in South Africa now. South African Senior Counsel Advocate Dalim Mpofu is due to appear before an independent disciplinary committee of the country's Legal Practice Council on Wednesday. He faces a range of charges, including 7 counts of misconduct related to his alleged conduct in several high-profile cases. The Legal Practice Council, which sets professional standards and regulates the conduct of legal practitioners, is responsible for ensuring accountability within the legal profession in South Africa. Kanima Panga has the story.
The legal future of Senior Counsel Advocate Dalim Mpofu is at risk. This as he faces a misconduct probe before the Disciplinary Committee of the Legal Practice Council, wherein if he is found guilty, it could lead to serious consequences, such as being struck off the roll of advocates. The 7 charges brought against Mpofu include, but are not limited to, allegations that he contravened the Code of Conduct and brought the legal profession into disrepute when Mpofu questioned Justice Dunstan Lambo at the 2022 JSC interviews on allegations of sexual harassment. In addition, Mpofu faces a similar charge for the September 2022 remarks he made to Section 194 Inquiry Chairperson Richard Janke in Parliament, which was perceived to be a quote-unquote threat. In addition, the quote-unquote "we spent our nights together" remark he made to the then President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, who is now the Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, Justice Mandisa Maya, which the charge sheet describes as quote-unquote discriminatory and laden with inappropriate sexual innuendo. A suggestion Mpofu denies.
It was clarified at the moment. That was 3 years ago. So what happens now in 2025? When was it unclarified? I mean, what kind of nonsense is this?
Do you think you should have made it, though?
Yes, I would. I'll make it. I'll make it now to you again. Yeah, we spent a night together studying with Justice Maya. Shoot me.
Mpofu, who will be afforded the opportunity to answer to the charges during the hearing, has described the charges as frivolous and completely unsustainable, adding that this is merely a witch hunt.
I'm telling you about the atmospheric issues, which make me totally convinced that this is just a witch hunt and it's not going to succeed, because if their intention is to dissuade me from doing my work and fighting for justice, well, they've come to the wrong address.
While a guilty misconduct finding could lead to serious consequences as drastic as being struck off the roll of advocates, Mpofu seemed unperturbed by that possibility.
I don't care. I mean, why should I care? I've been fighting for justice all my life. And many people ask that. What happens if they kill you? What happens if they torture you? What happens if they... This is a conscious decision. It's not by mistake that I decided to fight injustice. And I know the consequences. I don't expect racists and other people like that to give me a hug and a kiss. So I know that, if you fight for justice, those people who want the status quo to remain will come fighting you. Otherwise, I would just, be a normal, quiet lawyer minding my own business. I'm not scared of them. They must bring it on.
Kanima Panga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Rise and shine on Channel Africa. If you've just joined us, good morning to you. We are with you until 9 this morning as we continue then in terms of our coverage of news in and around our continent. Let's come to South Africa now, where Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago says the country's finance track under its G20 presidency has deliberately prioritized improving cross-border payments, citing the persistently high cost of remittances within Africa compared to other regions. Speaking during a panel at the International Monetary Fund spring meetings in Washington last week, Kganyago emphasized that despite technological advances, sending money across African borders remains significantly more expensive than the global average. He added that there is now a growing political will across the continent to tackle this challenge, recognizing that more affordable and efficient payment systems are critical for financial inclusion, trade, and economic growth.
What happens with the G20 is that every presidency adds an item. There isn't a mechanism to subtract or where we would say this is now bedded and we must actually have it behind us. For the South African presidency, in the finance track, for example, we decided we will have a focus with respect to cross-border payments. And we picked up cross-border payments for a reason. And it was because the cost of remittances in the African continent had proved to be higher than many corridors elsewhere in the world. But importantly was that there was political commitment to bringing down the cost of cross-border payments, because under the Saudi presidency, that was adopted at the Leaders Summit. And we decided that is what we are going to focus on, and we are going to finalize that.
To discuss this, we're joined on the line by a political economist at Zano Guru Advisory in Zimbabwe, Kevin Tutani. Kevin, good morning to you, and thanks for making time.
Great. Good morning as well, and thank you for having me.
Let's get a bit of a lesson of background in terms of the effects or the impact of transaction costs on remittances. Are they long-term enough that this could be a controllable variable when we talk cross-border payments?
Well, look, our payment corridors are more expensive when you compare Africa to perhaps the USA, Europe, Middle East, and all these other regions. Our payment corridors are significantly more expensive, and surely we need to do something about it. So the reasons why they're expensive, they're varied. For example, there's no economies of scale in terms of the volume of transactions. You look at Africa, it's relatively a small economy, even on a regional basis. And you try to compare it perhaps to Europe and the USA, these are massive economies. So there's a lot of financial transactions going on in those regions, even cross-border payments. And so what happens is the institutions which handle these payments now, they charge lower margins on account of that, amongst other things. So yes, this is an issue that needs to be sorted out. It can be sorted out sooner rather than later, particularly if more African countries, participate in the Pan-African payments and settlement system part.
I guess that answers the next question of why the costs of remittances remain so high within the continent. I mean, if the global average is over 6%, South Africa, for example, exceeds 10%. So it's what you speak of, small economies compared to other economies of Europe and so on, as well as institution charges they're charging lower margins. I think we're going to try and get a hold of Kevin again. The line just dropped there. We're talking to political economist at Zano Guru Advisory in Zimbabwe, just getting or unpacking the speech made last week by South Africa's Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago when it was a meeting that was taking place, the International Monetary Fund's spring meetings in Washington last week, to tackle the issue of high cost of remittances within the African continent. Kevin, are you back? We're going to take a short break. Stay with us here on Africa Rise and Shine.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9
Bonjour à
a.m.
tous.
Central African Time.
Nous aimerions entendre votre voix sur notre station de radio. Faites-nous plaisir et envoyez un petit mot ou un message de salutation à vos proches ou à vos présentateurs préférés de Channel Africa. Que vous soyez en Afrique, dans la diaspora ou n'importe où ailleurs dans le monde, nous voulons vous entendre. Envoyez vos messages de dédicace par email à info@channelafrica.co.za ou postez sur notre page Facebook, Twitter et Instagram avec le hashtag dédicace. Vous pouvez aussi nous faire une note vocale sur notre WhatsApp +27 66 408 87 42.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
We continue our chat with political economist at ZANU Guru Advisory in Zimbabwe, Kevin Tutani. They're unpacking a part of a speech by South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago at the International Monetary Fund's spring meetings in Washington last week, emphasizing the issue that is about the global average when it comes to remittances and how they are affected by transaction costs that are high, and how Africa needs to tackle this issue to lower these costs. I guess we've answered in terms of the reasons or factors that contribute as to why costs for remittances remain high within the continent of Africa compared to a global average. But differentiation between the different regions now in terms of the strategies it will take to tackle this challenge of more affordable and efficient payment systems, will that also need to be a consideration?
Well, definitely. And we need more African countries to actually get on board the Pan-African payment and settlement system. Because at the moment we have, I think, probably less than 15 countries are on board. And if that perpetuates, then perhaps Pan-African payments and settlement system will be unable to take off as it should. So we need more countries to get on board. You look at, for example, South Africa is not on board. You know, West Africa, most of the countries over there that are in ECOWAS, they are on board. In East Africa, Kenya is on board. North Africa, Egypt is on board. Zimbabwe managed to be on board. Djibouti is on board. But there's still the majority of African countries, they aren't on board, and we need to get that sorted. So they need to sign up for the Pan-African payment system, and when that happens, then we know that the thing can fly, if you can put it in that way.
South Africa had adopted this as one of the focus areas for the G20 finance working group since the Saudi Arabia G20. Has there been any meaningful progress?
Well, look, the G20, South Africa took over the presidency, I think, from the 1st of December 2024. So it's just about probably 4 months now since they've taken over. If I'm not wrong, probably 4 months since they've taken over. And I think they need more leeway as a country to make sure that they, put us in an acceleration to the advancement of these agendas. Now, what needs to be done? There's a particular G20 task force which looks at issues such as that, finance and investment. That's the work stream at the G20, which works on issues such as that. So actually, it's called the B20. It works with a G20 working group, again on finance and investment. So the finance and investment track, if I'm not mistaken, because I'm in a different track at the G20, so I might have gotten the wording wrong. The finance and investment track at the G20, now it has to bring in its ideas together and make sure they have a real, well-informed case for advancing these interests.
In light of U.S. tariffs, how much of an impact will this have in terms of African countries having to now be forced to recalibrate their trade strategies?
Well, they need to. I mean, you look at, for example, we really have bad news going on in the USA. I mean, the tariffs, they want SA, South Africa, to pay 30% in tariffs. Well, its competitors who are competing for the American market, for example, in the agricultural sector, Chile and Brazil, they're only being charged 10% in tariffs. South Africa wants to be, so USA proposes that South Africa should pay 20% more in tariffs, so it's 30%. So it's going to be quite a challenge really for South Africa to keep focusing on the USA. Well, it has to continue, definitely, but it also has to look for means and methods to diversify its export market. But you look at what's going on, for example, just within our home ground, SADC. You look at what's going on in SADC. In SADC, we have a free trade protocol which allows, if I'm not mistaken, 86% of product lines are supposed to pass through the broad borders tariff-free in SADC. But what's going on practically is that for nations such as Mozambique, I'm sure South Africa included, because I was reading a report by one non-governmental organization which says that for Mozambique, only 10% of their exports and goods are electing to qualify for those tariffs. So 90% of their exports from Mozambique, they don't qualify for these tariffs, meaning that there's still a lot of work to be done administratively to break down these tariffs, which we say we have taken down. It's just theoretical to say that we've taken them down. We still have to actually take them down.
All right, we'll leave it there for today, Kevin. We appreciate your time again, and thank you.
Thank you, too.
Kevin Tutani is a political economist at Zano Guru Advisory in Zimbabwe. That's how we end the second hour of Rise and Shine. As we enter into the next hour, the third and final one, we say good morning to you if you've just joined us. We're coming to you from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. My name is Asanda Beda.
And I'm Ndoro. Thanks so much indeed for tuning in. And coming up in this next half an hour in particular, we're going to be focusing on Burkina Faso. Now, that's one of the countries, the three countries that are led by the military at this time. Well, there was attempted coup in the country. We get to the bottom of that. What does it all mean? And we'll be speaking to Professor Kwezi Aning, the head of the Office of the International Cooperation Office, about the developments there. That's all coming up after the news with Jwalane Tulo Mwepe.
And then sports headlines with Fikile Lingwati.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Over 6,000 illegal immigrants have been arrested while attempting to enter or exit South Africa during the Easter period. The Border Management Commissioner, Dr. Michael Masiabado, says the successful interceptions can be attributed to the use of new technology, including drones and body cameras. Mozambique, Lesotho and Zimbabwe nationals have been identified as key contributors to continued mass illegal migration into the country. Masiabado says this is more so during the Easter holiday.
Even in this 2025 Easter period, a consistent pattern of top three nationalities which continue to undermine our immigration laws remains the Zimbabweans at 2,019, followed by Basutus at 1,921, and then followed by Mozambicans at 1,143. And the remainder of 1,170 were shared amongst the Swatis and other nationalities.
The national spokesperson of South Africa's African National Congress, Mahlengi Bengu Mudziri, says the call for a minister's resignation can only be justified if there is a failure to adhere to specific policies. This follows the Economic Freedom Fighters' call for Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to resign after a court ruling suspended the VAT increase set to take effect on Thursday. Bengu Mudziri says the resignation call is not justified.
Any resignation that gets occasioned must be triggered by a particular policy, a particular law, or a particular ethical standard. So we're not certain that that is correct because there's never been a time where the current Minister of Finance did disobey his oath to office, unless we can be presented with that particular thing.
Police in northeast Nigeria say 26 civilians have been killed when their truck drove over a roadside bomb close to the border with Cameroon. Boko Haram and rival Islamic State West Africa Province, or ISWAP, often launch sporadic ambushes on convoy and plant landmines along highways in northern Borno. It was not clear which group was behind the mine blast, although ISWAP is active in the area. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has declared a 3-day full ceasefire in the war with Ukraine to mark the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Soviet Union in the Second World War. The Kremlin said the ceasefire would run from the morning of the 8th of May until the 11th, which coincides with the end of World War II. In response, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha called for an immediate ceasefire lasting at least 30 days. The US President Donald Trump, who has been attempting to broker a truce between the two sides, said he wants to see a permanent ceasefire. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of trying to deceive the world by declaring the 3-day unilateral ceasefire for next week. Zelensky called it another attempt of manipulation.
Everyone is supposed to wait until May the 8th and only then ceasefire in order to provide Putin with silence during the parade. We value human lives, not parades. That is why we believe, the world believes, that there is no reason to wait until May the 8th. The fire must be stopped, not just for a few days, only to resume killing afterward. An immediate, complete and unconditional ceasefire for at least 30 days.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And in our sports headlines this hour, Pyramids Football Club striker Dodo El-Gabal's unity says it gave them help and assisted them to overcome the challenge of playing without large crowds. And in boxing news, Daniel Dubois and Alexander Usyk are expected to face off in July for the undisputed World Heavyweight Championship in England. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
My name is Neto, N-E-T-O Chamani. Osiyatiko, Nengezimo, Mkhanju, Phandle kunjani moyani. Voko tendele. Africa at Play, asiteleli siyashaya. Africa's velvet voice is in the house. Africa at Play is a place to be, where we speak all things sport and music, from the African continent to the rest of the world. We speak to your bundles of joy in sport, 12-year-olds and below, teenagers in sport. And we speak to elite athletes, administrators, coaches, and all the behind-the-scenes stakeholders of sport and music. Africa at Play, asiteleli siyashaya. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
If you are an upcoming artist looking to showcase your music to a wider audience, or just looking to promote your music on the radio, we can help. But there are a few things you can do to increase your chances of success. 1. Send your music to music@channelafrica.co.za. 2. We require the following information to help you best: your label, your ISRC code, title of the song, performer, composer, publisher, author, language, genre. These are the things we would like to compose your musical bio. 3. Listen to Channel Africa play your music on the radio. The perfect soundtrack for your day. With Channel Africa and your music, you will never be bored because we play your music. Experience the best African music on Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Have you been struggling to find Channel Africa?
Oh yes, where can I find you guys?
Well, you are in luck.
Warning, radioactive zone detected.
listen to the African Perspective on our brand new SABC Plus app. Download the fresh and easy to use app from sabcplus.com or the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Or just command your phone to find SABC Plus on your phone and check out all this good stuff. And that's where you will find Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Oh yes, this is fresh and easy.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
All right, do find us on our social media platforms on Channel Africa. We are on X, we are on Instagram, we are on TikTok at Channel Africa 1 is the handle. And then find us on Facebook as well as Channel Africa. We've actually been live streaming across YouTube as well. So you can peep in and then see how radio has just become TV now.
Oh gosh, I tell you, it's all the media is merging now.
Yeah.
Social media, radio, streaming, what, everything is all happening.
Yeah.
So, one of my favorite things to do, of course, is to take a look and see what's been happening on the continent on this day. So on the 29th of April 1974, Guinea-Bissau was admitted as a member of the United Nations following its declaration of independence from Portugal in 1973 and subsequent recognition by many African non-aligned nations. And this marked a significant victory for African liberation movements and anti-colonial struggles. In fact, there was in Portugal before something called the Revolution of the Roses. And so what had been happening in the country was there was a dictatorship that had been running Portugal for decades. And it was a bloodless coup, literally. People went on the streets with flowers, putting them into the nozzles of the guns of the soldiers. And the government of the day collapsed completely. And one of the reasons was that the Portuguese soldiers did not want to carry on fighting wars across Africa in Lusophone countries like Mozambique, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, and Sao Tome and Principe. And so once the Revolution of the Roses took place in Portugal, that pretty much opened the door for independence for the Lusophone countries in Africa. So a significant day, Guinea-Bissau joining the African Union.
And let's step out of the continent for a bit and go overseas. Talking of Canada, polls have opened in Canada's election that will determine the country's next prime minister in a race that could be shaped by an acute anger towards the US President Donald Trump. In January, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's popularity seemed sure to sink the Liberal Party's prospects in the federal election, trailing the Conservative Party by some 25 points. But Trump's return to the White House and his threats to annex Canada as America's 51st state, while straining their familial economic and diplomatic relationship, appears to have fueled a liberal resurgence in a country that currently also chairs the G7. Sherwin Bryce-Peace reports that the early favourites, the Conservatives, have seen their massive polling advantage evaporate in a matter of months.
Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
It's not that commonplace that the leader of a foreign country has such an outsized presence in another country's election. But US President Donald Trump has managed to do just that, and in so doing appears to have boosted the Liberal Party's prospects when just 4 months ago the Conservative Party appeared to be coasting to a certain victory amid the unpopularity of former Liberal leader and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But With Trudeau's resignation in January and Mark Carney's replacing him as Liberal leader and then Prime Minister in March, the political tide has shifted, in part because of comments like these from the leader of Canada's powerful southern neighbour.
One thing we're going to be demanding is we're going to be demanding respect from other nations. Canada, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. We're not going to have that anymore. We can't do it. I don't know if it's good for them. As you probably know, I say you can always become a state. And if you're a state, we won't have a deficit. We won't have to tariff you, et cetera, et cetera. But Canada has been very tough to deal with over the years. And it's not fair that we should have a $200 billion or $250 billion deficit. We don't need them to make our cars, and they make a lot of them. We don't need their lumber because we have our own forests, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need their oil and gas. We have more than anybody.
Canada's CBC News has Liberals edging Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives by almost 43% to 39% in their polling average, a massive shift fueled in part by Canadians' antipathy towards the US president, his trade wars and threats of annexation among others, that has seen a surge in Canadian patriotism.
That report by Shoen Bryce Peace.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Tensions are still running high in Burkina Faso after authorities said that they stopped a coup attempt aimed at toppling Captain Ibrahim Traore's government. Security officials claim that the plot involved soldiers working with terrorist groups to destabilize the country. Meanwhile, protests are being planned across Africa and globally, with supporters warning against foreign interference. To help us understand the situation, we're now joined by Professor Kwesi Aning from the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center in Ghana. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. I don't have anything to do with the Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Training Center. I just sent you a note. I'm only a security analyst.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Captain Traore came into power through a coup in 2022. How would you describe Burkina Faso's political and security situation under his leadership so far?
Well, I think Traore has re-energized the people of Burkina Faso, has recaptured the spirit that Captain Thomas Sankara rekindled several decades ago before he was murdered. That spirit of nationalism, of patriotism, and of a drive for self-sufficiency and independence is continuing to transform Burkina Faso. But there are multiple narratives. For those previously powerful countries that have lost a stake in Burkina Faso, they are creating an impression of instability, of violence, of deepening poverty. But for those of us who are proud Africans and want to see our continent transformed, we see in Captain Traore, together with his two other friends in Mali and Niger, a transformative agenda that is asking difficult questions, that is placing the interest of their countries at the center of their developmental and political choices. And we are beginning to see that even as poor countries, particularly in Burkina Faso, they are regaining their voice, their self-dignity, a sense that they can transform their country without being beggars. Traore has lit a powerful light on our continent that I'm very confident that if he's not assassinated by the conservatives and those in his country who still think in a neo-colonial way, then we will see a spread of Traore's views and his interventions.
Is there not a danger that a precedent is being set where there could be a thinking that the ends justifies the means, that there are positive coups that can be acceptable?
I don't make any excuses when so-called democratic processes only deepens and embeds corruption, exclusion, theft of public funds, governments run by friends and family. The democratic dividend must be spread in a fair, transparent, and proper manner. Nobody wants violent military coups in which human rights and the rule of law are suspended. But this is a contest for forms of governance. And for those who think that democracy is just a recycling of 4 yearly processes of just dropping a piece of paper in a box, then we can go to sleep and a tiny elite can loot, terrorize, and destroy their countries, as happened in Ghana for the last 8 years, then I can assure you that the chances of democracy, or so-called democracy, surviving on the continent of Africa has a very short span. I think for those who think that that form of governance is useful, and I'm not taking that argument away from them, then let them demonstrate to this great continent that that is a form of government that can deliver public goods, can create jobs, build hospitals, schools, provide security, and bring back the dignity of the African. Right now, nobody respects our continent. In the geopolitical conversations going on, we are not mentioned. The continent has become a beggar continent. Okay, with our leaders jetting around the whole place in their private jets, whilst we try to cross the Mediterranean to go and beg for, and work for a pittance. What Traore is trying to do is to say, hang on for a split second. We will change the curriculum. We will teach our history. We will bring our heroes. We will talk about our heroes and say, how did they survive and how did they fight? Is it going to be an easy struggle? No. Because we have a concerted, strong enemy that has sought to put us under that boot of colonialism and neocolonialism for as long as possible. Traore's interventions seeks to shift and change that narrative, and he will face strong oppositions from within his own country, from within his own heads of states. My own head of state, former head of state, Nana Akufo-Addo, went to the United States and sought to sell the Burkinabe state to the Americans, lied to the Americans about Burkina Faso. So the struggle is going to be difficult, it's going to be long, but we know that when people are concerted and led by informed leadership, then transformation takes place. And Traore has started a process of leading the way.
Earlier on, you said that it may be that Traore's thinking may spread. Is it coincidental that it's Francophone countries that have started this wave? Might we see this in other parts of the continent, Anglophone countries maybe? Or is this something peculiar to the Francophonies?
Well, I think in the beginning, one can say that there's a certain peculiarity to the Francophonic states because of the way their post-independence economies and politics were tied to the fortunes of France. So whilst for the Anglophone states, independence was a clear-cut severance of the umbilical cord between the African states and the UK, France maintained ever more closer ties economically, with their foreign reserves placed in Paris, their gold stocks, so their ability to wiggle or to determine their own future was considerably small. So the animosity against France, the sense that we are independent but even much more oppressed, was there. A typical example was the price of uranium bought by France to power the electricity in France for $2 a kilo, or whatever the price is, until now that it has been renegotiated to $200. Okay, and it cuts across. Mali has driven away the Australians and is trying to seize the gold mines and to refine. Likewise, Burkina Faso. So we are seeing the growth, albeit small, of specific economic interventions that, if the African Free Trade Continental Agreement works, can speed up all these developments. But my brother, it's not going to be easy, because no one has power and willingly, joyfully hands over that power. But as I'm saying, with a dedicated leadership, a concerted vision about what a possible outcome will be, Burkina Faso certainly, and together with the two other countries, Mali and Niger, forming the Alliance of Sahel States, would be successful.
Right. So it is a fascinating story that's playing out definitely in the region. You've been saying that this is going to be very hard and that you fear for assassination. So there must be then some credibility to the claims that are being made about this reported coup, that it genuinely was one, and that there may be links to the plotters and terrorist groups. Hello? Pop, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. So I was just talking about what we make of this reported coup attempt and the claims of links between plotters and terrorist groups.
Well, I think one of the narratives that disturbs me a lot, and which I'm beginning to challenge through my own work, is this notion of Traoré and his two colleagues in Mali and Niger suddenly losing the fight against terrorism. And it raises fundamental questions. If all these countries that supposedly provided security force assistance for years couldn't fight the terrorists, supposedly, how do they expect these governments in the last 2 years to be able to win the battle? And doesn't it raise concerns that terrorists who had almost been, battled to a stalemate suddenly have more effective weapons, are moving much quickly, are being able to attack government forces, that their communications have improved and their firepower? So suddenly the enemy landscape is beginning to shift. And I don't have any doubt at all that intelligence is being shared between the detractors of these regimes and some of the violent extremist or terrorist groups empowering them with intelligence and with the necessary firepower to try to undermine these regimes. I don't have any doubt at all. Historically on this continent, we have experienced the alliance between opportunists who seek to undermine their own regime. So this is not a surprise.
Talk to me a little bit about Burkina Faso looking to Russia, getting closer ties, including new gold deals, and this shift away from Western allies. What do you make of this? Is this a better friend, or could there be unintended consequences as Russia has its own bigger agenda across the continent?
You know, I always laugh when people bring in Russia. Russia has been on this continent for decades. Russia was there when we fought our colonial struggles, or the Soviet Union then. Russia, nobody is talking about Mr. Trump befriending Mr. Putin. So why can't we? We, or Burkina Faso, as a sovereign independent state, has the legitimate right to calculate and to make choices as to which set of friends will better help it to achieve its national interest. Now, you mentioned the gold. All the countries, the previous countries that had been in Burkina Faso, had basically cheated and stolen the gold from the Burkinabe people. Traore is saying, okay, fine, this is a resource embedded in my state, in my soil. I want the best price for it. I want those who can give me the technology to be able to mine and to refine and to add value to my gold. So you know what, for those who think that they don't agree with this, let them go jump into the sea. It's as simple as that. For those who think they don't agree, let them go to Washington and make a similar argument. African states, and particularly those led by enlightened leadership, will not tolerate this neo-colonial narrative that we are your friends. Why are you going here? Who can help you to make choices? We are old enough to make our own choices.
Prof, we're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank you so much indeed for your insights and analysis. We're very grateful, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's Professor Emmanuel Kwesi Aning, a distinguished Ghanaian academic and security expert, currently serving as the director of the Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center in Accra, in Ghana, joining us talking about Burkina Faso and the path that it's on under its leader, Captain Traore. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Tualane Tulo Mwete.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, over 6,000 illegal immigrants have been arrested while attempting to enter or exit South Africa during the Easter period. The Border Management Commissioner, Dr. Michael Masiabato, says the successful interceptions can be attributed to the use of new technology, including drones and body cameras. Police in northeast Nigeria say 26 civilians have been killed when their truck drove over a roadside bomb close to the border with Cameroon. And finally, Mark Carney and the Liberal Party have claimed a remarkable victory in the Canadian election, and it appears to have come with a big assistance from Donald Trump. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's get our last sports update for Rise and Shine now. Good morning, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. We begin with football news. World Football's governing body, FIFA, has officially rejected Liberia's appeal for a rematch in its 2026 World Cup qualifier against Tunisia, which saw the Lone Stars fall 1-0 on the 19th of March 2025 at the Samuel Kenyon Ndoro Sports Complex. Following the controversial defeat, the Liberian Football Association, LFA, backed by the Ministry of Youth and Sports, lodged a formal protest with FIFA, citing multiple questionable officiating decisions by Ivorian referee Clement Franklin Kepan. The LFA argued that Kepan's handling of the match greatly impacted its outcome, particularly pointing to 3 denied penalties appeals. Despite weeks of review, FIFA concluded that while officiating mistakes were evident, they did not warrant a replay of the match. Despite the setback, officials from the LFA and the Ministry of Youth and Sports, who initially pushed for the rematch, have remained silent on FIFA's ruling. Mamelodi Sundowns national team superfan Mamello Maka is looking forward to the Total Energies CAF Africa Cup of Nations AFCON Morocco 2025. The biennial continental tournament kicks off on the 21st of December and will conclude on the 18th of January 2026. Maka says Bafana are on A level.
All roads lead to Morocco. It will be my first time being in Morocco. I'm looking forward to that, especially, being inspired by the performance of Bafana. Nothing beats that. They are on the A level, and the whole country is looking forward to that. Yeah, the 2 countries will, the whole continent will come together.
The Kaizer Chiefs national team superfan Masilo Machaka believes the country's continental representatives, Mamelodi Sundowns and Orlando Pirates in the CAF Champions League, have set a good tone and adds a great experience for Bafana to compete during AFCON.
They compete on the continental stage because you could even see it brings stability and also an experience of what the continental stages could do for Bafana. Now we don't even have to panic. We know the players to choose, who to choose, and who to represent Bafana, as they did well as well in Cote d'Ivoire. But I can tell you this time around, we are going to Morocco. Nothing else, my brother. I think this will be Hugo Bro's goodbye, if I'm not mistaken, bringing the trophy back home to South Africa. But I don't think we'll have to leave because we still have a World Cup to look into. So, to me, this is the right moment for us as South Africans.
And in athletics marathon, Elroy Geland has set a South African marathon record after a stellar Hamburg run. Geland broke the South African marathon record by finishing 4th with a time of 2 hours 05.36 seconds, shaving 57 seconds of Hertz's 1999 record. His time was also inside the 2 hours 06.30 seconds automatic qualifying time for the World Championships in Tokyo in September. Let's end with golf news. Zimbabwe junior golf team comprising of Thomas Sinclair, Tanaka Chatora, Brendan M. and Tawana Mangoma have qualified for the Toyota Junior Golf World Cup 2025 after coming second at the All Africa Junior Golf Team Championship in Tunisia. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's get a final business and economics update with Tabiso Lihuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. Rwanda has arrested 3 top officials from the country's Mines, Petroleum and Gas Board, along with 4 businessmen suspected of corruption and abuses of power. According to Rwanda's investigation bureaus, the trio, Augustine Rumoshana, John Kanyangira and Richard Niyongabo, were being jailed in the capital Kigali without giving a date for their arrests. It isn't clear whether the officials are linked to the illicit traffic in minerals from the resource-rich Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where Rwanda is accused of backing M23 rebels to siphon off its neighbors' minerals. Rating agencies say they're closely monitoring developments in South Africa on the 2025 budget and the economy. Sovereign Africa Ratings believes that the Democratic Alliance and Economic Freedom Fighters' challenge on the VAT underscores the critical issue of the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches in fiscal decision-making. The Western Cape High Court issued a court order suspending the planned 0.5 percentage point value-added tax increase that was set to take effect on the 1st of May. Earlier, the Finance Ministry had also withdrawn the increase. The South African Revenue Service has indicated that it's back to the drawing board on the 2025 budget. Zwelibanzi Machia is the Chief Ratings Officer at Sovereign Africa Ratings.
While the Finance Minister's team argues that the provision is constitutional, the challenge raises valid concerns about ensuring a robust legislative oversight. So for us as a credit rating agency, we will be closely monitoring the outcome because it could influence perceptions of institutional checks and balances.
South Africa's Department of Trade, Industry and Competition says, following public interest, it has extended the deadline for comments on the draft transformation fund by 15 days. The public now has until the 28th of May to comment on the draft concept about plans to create a $5 billion fund that supports black-owned businesses and SMMEs in key sectors like agriculture and energy. Minister Parks Dau says that the Transformation Fund is being set up by mainly combining money from existing enterprise and supply development programs. By bringing these funds together, Department spokesperson Yamkela Fanisi says they hope to accelerate transformation efforts as required by the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act.
We think that key issues that are going to feature in the fund is strong accountability on the funds when we disperse them. We are going to have a proper structure with boards to oversee and with powers to also oversee and to also have check and also possibly have quarterly reports that actually articulate to who did you give the money, where and which sectors, so that we can then be able to make a fair dent, but also be able to account.
Farmers say above-average rainfall last week across most of Côte d'Ivoire's main cocoa-growing regions is expected to boost the development of the April to September mid-crop. Côte d'Ivoire, the world's top cocoa producer, has entered its April to mid-November rainy season, a period when showers are abundant and often heavy. Farmers say that regular rainfall through May would help the development of small plots that will be ready to harvest in August and September, providing a boost in production at the tail end of the mid-crop. Amazon has launched internet satellites into space, marking the start of its push to rival Elon Musk's Starlink program. The 27 satellites are the first of more than 3,000 due to be sent into orbit for Project Kuiper, which aims to beam high-speed broadband across the globe. Amazon is, however, playing catch-up with SpaceX. The BBC's Lili Jamali has the details.
The first 27 Amazon satellites of more than 3,000 planned were launched into orbit from Florida. By comparison, Starlink already has more than double that number, now providing internet service to millions of customers. They include individuals, businesses, and governments. Among them, for now, Ukraine, during the long war following Russia's invasion.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 606. In Botswana, 13 pula 60. Kenya, 128 shilling 527. In Zambia, 27 kwacha 89. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollars are trading at 5 real 67. In Russia, 82 rubles 34. India, 85 rupees 20. China, 7 yuan 29. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 18 rand 61. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. A look at commodities markets. Gold is trading at $3,310. Platinum at $983 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $65.49 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabiso Lohoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
43 minutes past 8 Central African Time. Let's move to the U.S. now, where the President, Donald Trump, marks his first 100 days in office on Tuesday. He is facing growing opposition to his sweeping America First agenda and an approval rating in decline. According to an ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll out over the weekend, Trump achieved the lowest 100-day approval rating for U.S. presidents in the past 8 decades, with just 39% of respondents approving of his handling of the job. He has governed through executive order, often circumventing the legislature, testing the legal parameters of his policy choices, and inflicting a global trade war that has added stress to the global economy while seeking to mediate conflicts where progress has been slow. Sherwin Bryce Peace has more.
During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
President Donald Trump's intent made with simplistic clarity at his January inauguration, and evidenced by the near-frenetic pace in which his administration has moved. He signed 139 executive orders, moved to slash the federal workforce, dismantling agencies like USAID that for decades played an outsized role in the global humanitarian space, while instituting a trade war that has left global markets on edge and attacked allies and foes alike, including South Africa. Emma Ashford is a senior fellow at the nonpartisan think tank, the Stimson Center.
I don't think Donald Trump's worldview has changed at all since 2016. I actually think it's quite consistent with some of the things he was saying back in the 80s. He still is very hard-nosed on trade. Obviously, we've seen with the tariffs. He is, again, generally opposed to allies who don't pay their own way, who are free riders, and he tries to strike deals with other countries, right? He uses U.S. power to beat them over the head, whether that's military power, sanctions, the threat of tariffs, whatever it is, until they turn around and give him what he wants.
And while his worldview might not have shifted in the second term, his approach has, as Professor Matthew Dalek of George Washington University explains.
Politically, I think Trump was more cautious in some ways. I mean, he would back off a little bit more frequently in the first term when he came under political pressure. We saw a little bit of that when he put a 90-day pause on these recent tariffs. But, I think that they're more emboldened, more extreme, more determined to enact the agenda that they had long wanted to enact.
A new poll from ABC News, The Washington Post, and Ipsos finds that just 39% of respondents approve of Trump's handling of his job, down 6 percentage points since February, while 55% disapprove. According to the pollster, the previous low for a president at the 100-day mark, dating back to 1945, was Trump at the 100-day mark in 2017, when he achieved a 42% approval rating. Associate Dean at New York University's Center for Global Affairs, Carolyn Kisan.
In these 100 days, a lot of what would have been considered unthinkable is transpiring. And I think that I see a number of threats against the democracy that I think many people have believed to be secure, foundational, solid, that those cracks, and some of those existed, before Trump came into office, but he's been able to sort of go into those cracks and widen those cracks in a way that I think is a larger threat to the democracy that the United States has known and that the world has depended on.
Protests against the administration and his key advisor Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency have swept across the country, while the Republican-controlled Congress has avoided any confrontations with the executive despite their oversight role. That has left the federal courts to step in as a check on Trump's power.
I think there's a general feeling, though, that the opposition has to do more, that marches are not enough, and that marches will... Sure, they get attention the day of, but what kind of actual change do they bring about? And so if you think about sort of movements for change, it has to be very consistent, it has to be really focused. I don't know if we have seen clearly yet what that opposition is or will be.
True to his word, he has cracked down on illegal immigration, with illegal crossings at the US-Mexico border falling to its lowest levels in March, as Danielle Pletka of the American Enterprise Institute explains.
To watch how he has managed to close down illegal border crossings over his first not even 100 days. Indeed, this happened in the first month, that you saw that from tens of thousands of people crossing every day, you were down to the single or double digits of people trying to cross the border illegally. That told us something very important. It told us that with will, it could be done.
President Trump has also withdrawn the United States from the Paris Climate Change Agreement, the World Health Organization, and the UN Human Rights Council, preferring a unilateral approach to the consensus-driven ideals of multilateralism. His second term started with some momentum on ending the war in Gaza, only later to see the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas collapse. His unilateralism is also evident in how his administration is playing a mediation role in the Russia-Ukraine war, where frustration at the slow pace towards a ceasefire is beginning to emerge, and how it has implemented its trade policy with nations around the world. 100 days and counting, with 1,361 more days to come in his second term. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
Her name is Puleng Mulibati, and she's on Tech Africa.
Leading the tech conversation every single Sunday on Channel Africa.
Robotic process automation, just from a definitive perspective, is a software that emulates human activity for us to be able to remove mundane, repetitive tasks and build efficiency. That's what it means from a definitive perspective. Now, where exactly has this been reused, or has people seen this or familiar with? Now, you would have seen probably in the automotive industry these big robots that are moving large objects and assembling them. And it's generally to assist the particular production process to be more efficient, and also to be able to avoid any injuries from human activity, to be able to lift these heavy objects that can cause harm.
One of the key findings I think that stands out for me is that developing market economies and people are using AI much more than developed market economies, which I thought was quite surprising. In fact, in South Africa, amongst the people we surveyed, 91% report using generative AI for their work.
Tech Africa every Sunday, 9 till 12 noon, Central African Time. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The lack of necessary educator support continues to be a challenge that negatively affects teaching and learning in schools globally. This is according to delegates who attended the South African Mpumalanga Provincial G20 Education Indaba, held in White River in Mpumalanga. Delegates also highlighted the need for these challenges to top the agenda of education-related issues to be discussed at the upcoming G20 summit. The summit will be held in the country later this year. Mtobi Simkalipi reports.
Different education stakeholders, including labor unions, SGP members, education experts, and organizations attended the G20 Education Indaba in White River. The Indaba identified inadequate support for teachers as one of the key challenges in the education sector. Education expert Professor Veronica McKay says such problems negatively impact teaching and learning.
An area of focus that we have been looking at is teacher isolation. Often, particularly new teachers, novice teachers who come into the system, they're often left to sink or swim, and it's a global, it's not our paper is completely a global paper. So we've looked at what happens in other countries. We're looking at high attrition rates amongst new teachers because of lack of support, and how positive new teachers respond to mentoring, to having a peer mentor in the school, and also to being involved in professional learning communities. And South Africa, in the previous TALIS, the international study, we found that only 3% of our teachers participated really regularly, against the OECD average of 21%.
The United Nations Children Fund says lack of proper early childhood development could have a long-lasting consequences on a child's future. Chief of Education at UNICEF South Africa, Hannah Yoshimeto.
I think it's a common thing, not just Mpumalanga, but it's a common thing where early childhood care and education, early childhood development itself, by nature, should be delivered cross-sectorally, not just education, but also through health, social development, the nutrition aspect, the protection aspect. But then working collaboratively and efficiently on the ground has never been an easy thing. But there needs to be a mechanism that is led by the communities, led by the local administration, that actually really serves holistically for these young children.
Basic Education Deputy Minister Dr. Regina Mhaule admits that more needs to be done to improve early childhood development.
Early learning is very important. Like any structure, when you build a structure, you cannot start by roofing. You start with a foundation. And the foundation must be strong. If you want to put a double story, the foundation must fit for that purpose. So that's why we are focusing on early learning and teacher development on early learning, that we must train our teachers to be able to teach our children at that age, to prepare them that when they go to the higher grades, they have that strength and they have that knowledge.
Lack of digital tools such as computers and tablets, especially in rural schools, is another gap that needs to be bridged, says Mpumalanga Premier Mandla Ndlovu.
The backlog is very huge because in the past we're only concentrating on grade 12. So it means that in our school, only grade 12 learners were benefiting. If this year we have got 60,000 learners that are in grade 12, so it means that out of the population of our schools here in the province, only 60,000 learners were benefiting.
Other provinces are expected to hold similar engagements in the coming months. I'm Toby Simkalipi in White River, Mpumalanga.
Okay, it's a little bit before 9 o'clock, which means it's time to find out what's happening in On the Move coming up after the 9 o'clock news. Palace is in studio. Hello.
Good morning.
How are you?
Morning.
How are you guys doing?
Yeah,
Great.
Brilliant.
And you?
Good. Doing good, thank you. All right, today on the Move, in the first hour of the show, we're taking a look at the impact and burden of women in malaria-ridden countries. It has a lot of socio-economic issues, including like pregnancy complications from malaria, all the way to the financial toll that women face in these countries. So we're going into that conversation in the first hour. We'll be going in the cubicle, that is our workplace feature, in the second hour of today's show. And we're seeing a huge return to office push by companies like Google, Amazon, and many others. And of course, we'll be speaking about the impact of that. Why are companies pushing for remote workers to come back in the office? And what are the pros and cons both ways? We're speaking to HR specialist in Namibia, Andrea Zimba, in the second hour. Then to our Money Matters feature in today's final hour, speaking about family businesses. And sometimes people say the two things you should never mix are friendships, families, and business. But many people do have businesses that are in the family, but only 1 in 3 family businesses actually survive, and we'll be going into that in the final hour. CEO of Sugar Creek Wealth, Gerald Mwanambira, will be chatting to us in the third hour.
Why is that? Because your family members should be the ones that really want to support and see you grow.
So right.
And that you can trust as well.
Typically
but it turns out the other way around.
Typically what happens is a patriarch or an individual begins the business.
Mm-hmm.
When the children take over, it is now another layer.
Right.
It's fine when there's one person who's in charge and is managing and building a business.
And what does define like calling your business a family business? Could it be maybe among siblings or like parents and their children? Or is it just like handing over a business to your family for the next generation? Is that a family business?
Typically it's owned by the family, so the shareholders
are
predominantly are family members. That then is a family business. So even if they don't work there, so they might just be trust fund kids, it's still a family business. So ownership is the key to your question.
All right.
It probably also starts with how you raise your children. If, for example, I'm the matriarch who starts that business, the values I've instilled in them and the kind of relationships they have with each other in the home setup will probably play itself out in the company as well.
There are already so many complications in families in general. Like families are already so complicated, and putting finances and business in all that obviously it makes sense why only 1 in 3 survive.
But also understand, your dreams are not your children's dreams.
Correct.
Exactly.
And parents often think, I worked hard to set up this business. And all he wants to do is play football.
Exactly. Well, On the Move is coming up next after the news with Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa Tau. From us on Rise and Shine, Asanda Beda and
Peter Ndoro.
It's goodbye for now. We'll see you guys tomorrow. And we hand you over to Jwalani Tulongwepe with the news, and then Fikile Lingwati will have your sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Top stories. South Africa's border authority intercepts thousands of illegal immigrants, and Canada's Liberal Party retains power in the elections. Good morning. Over 6,000 illegal immigrants have been arrested while attempting to enter or exit South Africa during the Easter period.